Hello and welcome to Edinburgh Business Stories. EBS is hosted by myself, Alex Richards of Umore, a video production studio based in Edinburgh and Bristol, and Alan Smith of Action Coach, providing business coaching throughout Edinburgh and the Lothians. If you aren't already, remember to subscribe, and I hope you enjoy this upcoming episode of Edinburgh Business Stories. A big thank you to Rathbones for partnering with us on this episode. Rathbones. Invest well, live well. Vicky, Ed, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you
Great
for
to be
having
here.
us.
Thank
Lovely.
you.
Give us a snapshot of who you guys are and what your business does.
Well, we're Loop agencies. So we are both co-founders. So Loop agencies build dedicated creative agencies for mainly financial services clients. So for people who aren't in marketing, that really means all of the campaigns that you see as a customer or to advisor in a business-to-business sense, we tend to create quite a lot of those. So be it email, film, social, content, and the teams we build work for those dedicated financial services brands. So we went very deep niche twice when we set up. So let's go one sector, one type of working. So
yeah, and that's kind of backed up all of the stuff that we do. We tend to back it up with a lot of technology, way more AI, as you can imagine. It's changing virtually by the day at the moment. So we're leaning into new ways of producing and delivering that content, but in an appropriate way. We're not just hoping you press the magic AI button and churn something out. There's a lot of talent and skill to wrangle these AI tools to make them work and get the best out of them. So we've got a really young, dynamic team, a kind of a new wave of designers that can edit, that can prompt, that can do animation. So they're really multi-skilled, because that's really what you need in this day and age. You can't just have a one-trick pony anymore.
Great. And just to clarify, can you guys explain the difference then towards how the original traditional marketing setup agency world would work with a big bank versus what you guys do?
Yeah. So traditionally, and I think the more, dare I call it, traditional agency model and client relationship is you would have a brief, you would reach out to an agency or your incumbent agency. Here's the brief. Can you tell us how much it's going to cost, how much time it's going to take? They would disappear for 2 or 3 weeks, come back with a range of concepts or ideas for the client to say, I like it, I don't like it. And then they'd go into production delivery of that. The problem with that is it's very much a time and money scenario. The client's a bit at arm's length. They're not working dedicated with the client, so they're probably juggling that along with maybe another range of client jobs. And it takes a long time.
That's the key difference, isn't it? That's the key difference, is that slow, arm's length, distant versus flip that on its head, 100% all in, dedicated, living and breathing their business agenda, their brand, the creative, just working on that one brand very deeply. You get far more efficiency, scale, and sort of brand governance and understanding by doing it that way.
Yeah.
And they become basically a part of the team, an extension of the team. So they get involved in a lot more meetings. They build better relationships with the client because they're on calls most days with them. And also it's kind of beneficial from a Loop perspective as well, because they get earshot of other things that are happening in the business and where we can add value and help them out there as well. So yeah, it feels for us, and the reason we did it was because we've seen it firsthand working for an agency that was embedded, that this was really a shift in the way the industry was going. And I think
it used to be called the new agency model. I think it's the only agency model really that is now going to work with sort of scale and tech and efficiency, which I'm sure we're come on to. But another thing about introductions is you don't always have co-founders, right, on your podcast. It's, you often have one person at the mic, and it's a really interesting dynamic being a co-founder. So, and I'm sure we'll come on to this as sort of the support, the building each other up. But from the setup, luckily we've both got different skill sets. So
completely.
Ed is the techie design one. I do not understand really most of that stuff. Whereas, I can be the slightly more organized finance, client service, sort of business run type person.
She said organized first there.
Well, it's true. but you need the yin and yang, right? You can't, I'm sure like you guys, you can't both be good at the same things. You need to be complementary and good at different things. And that's what makes it really work really well.
Yeah.
And it's a perfect balance, right? It's that we don't tend to tread on each other's toes. Also, neither of us have run a business before, so that element of it we've learned together, which has been good. But I think, definitely there's complementary skill sets, which is great, and it has definitely worked for us. And I think there's that support thing as well. You think back on the last 3 years, there's no way I could have done this on my own. It would have been so lonely. And there's times when you kind of go to those difficult places. Yeah. And we just, I mean, we have a good relationship, so we can be really transparent and honest with each other. If I'm having a bad week, I'm like, I'm struggling. And Vicky will be like, take a day off, take a couple of days off, and vice versa. So it's worked really well from that perspective.
Veins. You can't always be at your best A game. So like sometimes someone else has got to lead it. But
definitely.
So it's a really good compliment.
Yeah. So take us back then. How did this all start? What was your journey into this world?
Into this world of financial services and marketing. We'll talk Edinburgh first, and then I suppose we could go back. Yeah, so we'd never worked together, actually. We worked in very similar circles for big financial services, brands, and also agency side. And Edinburgh's a small town, right? So we really should have worked together, but we didn't. But we did meet at our previous job. So we used to work together then. Both left without sort of a reason. We didn't leave together, or we definitely didn't leave to start another agency. It was a kind of...
Circumstance.
Oh God, there's no jobs. Okay, shall we try and start something then? So that's how we started it 3 years ago. So
so where was that then? When did that conversation happen that you said, should we do something?
Vicky was actually my boss at our previous role, and I was on the leadership team. And like Vicky said, we left roughly, maybe a month or so apart, wasn't it? Nowhere to go, no plans. And we reached out to each other and said, hey, do you want to catch up for a coffee? Just catch up and see how things are going. We ended up in Starbucks on Princess Street.
Starbucks on Princess Street, where you can see the castle.
Oh, yeah.
Window
Nice.
The view was
table,
nice.
which I can see at night.
It was a very sunny summer's day.
Yeah.
And we sat and we just, how are things? How are you getting on? How are you feeling about the fact that, there's nothing in the pipeline yet? And, comfort, we both got a little bit of money from leaving the previous job. So it wasn't urgent that we needed to, but we sat, and probably after about an hour of conversation, we were like, well, we could start an agency. We had some ideas, and that whole different agency approach and the skill set that we'd learned of 20 years in FS and agency side as well. So we just there was no grand plan, or we just kind of went, let's just see what we can do. And actually I was going to Spain with the family on holiday, I think a couple of days later. And we incorporated, while I was in Spain, Vicky incorporated the company and sent me the certificate and goes, look, we've done it. That's us. The name came up. Then
do the name, do the logo.
That was
You're
another
in the
thing.
cinema.
It seems like I do nothing. So I was in the cinema and I came out and we'd already had a short list of names, but we'd both kind of liked one of them. And by the time I came out of the cinema, it was like,
right, I've registered the name. We're incorporated.
Let's
go on your holiday. It starts when you come back. Yeah.
And I think that's been one of our strengths over the years.
Yeah.
Has been that let's not pontificate over every little detail. Probably the only one we really took a long time on was our first hire.
Oh yeah, well that's
we
that's
definitely went backwards and forwards a lot on that. But yeah, we just do stuff. It's just like, that's a great idea, let's do it. And if it doesn't work, we'll stop doing it. And if it does work, brilliant, we'll move on.
I think a lot of your founder stories come through, right? There's a secret sort of madness in being a business startup or a founder, really, versus taking, let's say, a more traditional route of being employed, which has a lot of merits. And thank God for that sliding doors moment, really, because I was almost going to accept another job. Right. And, the red flag was the only time they could interview me, the management team, was the day of the Queen's state funeral. And it sent me vibes about their company culture that okay, so that's the only half hour you have in your whole diary for a month is the national bank holiday that we've all been suddenly given due to that. So I pulled out of that, and thank God I did. Yeah. Hence the coffee, hence the...
And interestingly,
shall we see if we can do it and survive till Christmas?
I'd been offered a job by the previous employer as an alternative role. Here, you can go and work for this cigarette and tobacco company. And I was like, it's 2022. Morally, my uncle died of lung cancer as well. So I was like, I'm not going to take that job either for the same reasons. I think as you get older, the decision-making process is a lot clearer in your head. If you're in your 20s and you're just wanting to kind of build your career, you'll say yes to a lot of stuff that maybe doesn't sit right with your values. But I think as you get older, you just, you make calls based on
Your
experience
morals, right?
and morals a lot more than you maybe do when you're younger.
This episode of Edinburgh Business Stories is brought to you by Rathbones. Rathbones is one of the UK's leading wealth managers with an office right here in the city of Edinburgh. They have a long history of helping people plan and invest for the future they want, and believe there's one word you should live by: well. Well learned, well invested, well timed. Maybe you're scaling a business or climbing the career ladder, and you're earning bonuses, dividends, and a significant salary. Success is rewarding, but it often leaves you time poor. Rathbones understand the demands of business ownership and professional careers, because when you plan well, you can grow well, live well, and sleep well. Wherever you are on your wealth journey, Rathbones can help you go further, and they do it all well. To learn more, visit rathbones.link/EBS. Rathbones, invest well, live well. When you invest, your capital is at risk. So you get back off holiday, the logo's designed, you're like, right. And then you sit down together and you're like, right. We've done it. What's next? Talk us through, the first client. How did that come about? First hire you've mentioned. What was that like?
I think there was a step before that actually of strangely manifesting you could actually do it. So beyond the whiteboard with the values, which was actually the very first step, literally a whiteboard with magic markers saying, we're not going to do this unless it's a different type of agency and we don't burn out. We look after ourselves. We look after people. We get respect from clients. So, it is a subservient relationship sometimes when you're serving clients. So we're going to bring a brilliant service, but we want respect, back. And it was these non-negotiables that had to be there from the start. So that was actually the very first thing we did. Because what is the point if you're sort of not doing that? And then the second ridiculous thing we did, which was very foolhardy, we only had £2,000 in the bank. We put £1,000 in each. And I went, well, let's put £1,000 of that down for the Christmas party, because we've got to be able to see beyond September. And I have to visualize December that A, we'll still be going, and B, at least some people will be sat around the table and we may or may not have won any business to actually talk about at that Christmas party. So luckily we did fill that table and we did have some business to talk about.
We had 10 people around the table, a couple of ringers, but
friends and family,
But in general, there was people we'd worked with over that 6 months.
Just made it real. Yeah.
It did. Wow. And I think we've done that all the way through for the last 3 years. There's always been a goal or a target or something to aim for, big or small, whether that be a number or it's a new website or it's a new kind of proposition. We've always gone, right, by that date, we're going to have done that. And we, by and large, stick to it, don't we?
You just got to trick your mind that you can do it, to keep that faith. And it helped to the first client we won, actually, which is very ironic because it's our only non-financial services client, which is the area that we love and specialize in.
But it's still a regulated industry.
It is still regulated, but it was that thing about punching above our weight. So we got an in with the Edinburgh Fringe. So that is the dream client for any Edinburgh-based creative agency to win the Fringe. Or Scotland, obviously, yeah. But the Fringe is like the creme de la creme of creativity, that program, the whole campaign. We're like, never in a million years. We literally we were about 2 months old, something like that.
2 months old.
Anyway, we worked day, night, every weekend. That was actually the only pitch we've ever done. And came up with the goods. And like the Fringe tell us, like, you gave us a real moral problem because it was just you two kind of winging it. And they were sort of asking us, are you actually going to hire anyone? I'm like, yes, of course we are. Are you still going to be trading by next summer's Fringe? Yes, absolutely. And we just renewed. So we've been doing that now. We're going to be doing it, a 6-year contract we've got from them. But it's
the nicest thing about that, which I think we both carry quite proudly, is we ended up at one of the awards dinners, and the Fringe was up for the award. And our client, who was there at the time, that story, that quandary of she said, hands down, we couldn't hire you. We had 4 established Scottish agencies that had been going for years.
All very good, yeah.
And we had you. Let's be honest, there was too big a risk to hire you.
Yeah.
We couldn't do it. All the alarm bells ringing. And she said, but when it came to the crunch, you were the only person that we wanted to hire because you cared more than anybody else. And I think we've had that.
Hungry.
It's almost one of our values is, we care. This is something we really care about. And she said, we couldn't not give it to you, and we're really grateful to them because so many companies, you don't get fired for IBM, the classic quote. So they will always go for the safe option, but the Fringe didn't. They went, we're going to go with our gut on this one.
And what did they see in you that said you cared more? What actually did they?
They just said we wanted it. You wanted it more than anybody else.
We were so hungry for it. I mean, because there was nothing we weren't going to do. So we kept coming back to them, more ideas. Okay, we'll take that away. We listened to their feedback. Yeah. And I think we did the radical thing, which we'll come on to when we talk about tech and being a different type of agency. But we did the polar opposite of what you normally do for a Fringe campaign, and we didn't do the cover. Because the cover is amazing, right? We all love the Fringe cover, but it's the digital marketing campaign that sells the tickets. So actually, we reversed the whole creative strategy into selling tickets digitally with display advertising.
There were some real quick wins there as well. They when we started, they'd never done an animated display or social media ad. Everything was just a static image, and it was so simple. And it was like, how are you not doing this in 2022? Zero measurement, and so. It was what came naturally to us because I've been digital designer and that side of the marketing fence for the last 20 years. I built the first website with a team of other people at Standard Life Investments. We built their first ever website. It's showing my age there, but when that came along as an opportunity, and so over the years we've seen that develop and what it can bring to the table, and it staggers me actually how often the simplest solutions aren't being used, and it was a really quick win. And as soon as we showed them some of the ideas and movement, and I think that helped sell.
And you don't build one ad, you make 300, right? So we can target to an 18-year-old who's into comedy versus a 45-year-old who's into theatre and opera. So we can.
So that was genuinely like revolutionary for them.
Wow! And this happened really fast then.
That was a nice lucky break, right? We got a good introduction, but we worked hard and were hungry. But it was a very big boost of confidence. Like you think, okay, maybe we might have a tiny something. And I think our confidence was building because I think when you have previous phases in your career when sometimes, your confidence can get knocked with things, there was a bit of that as well, a lot of imposter syndrome, a lot of building yourself back up. So you're wearing that as sort of weighing you down, rather than sort of being really positive. So I think, the Fringe was, and then it really has scaled from there of getting right into our heartland of financial services clients, life and pensions, asset management, which we really know well, and building up some fantastic blue chip clients in that area.
Can I just ask, how have you done that though? Because it was an introduction obviously into the Fringe, but how? Because that's the biggest part of starting a business is just getting clients, which doesn't happen overnight. So you've obviously done something really well.
And I think we've both been in financial services marketing for 20 years, give or take, whether the agency side or whether it be working for corporates. And interestingly, when I was in my 20s, the people I worked with were brilliant. I just happened to be in a group of people who were all really loving what they were doing, pushing the envelope in terms of what you could do, what was different, what was new. They've all gone on to be senior marketing leaders in financial services companies in London and Scotland. So actually, those relationships that I've built over the years, and same with Vicky as well,
they're there to back you.
They're the people so they kind of know you enough to know that you're credible, and that if you're going to do something like Loop, that you're probably worth backing. Come in and do a bit of work for us. Let's see how this works out. And then you've got to put your money where your mouth is and prove that. But that kind of opened, I think, a few doors early on for us, for sure.
I think it becomes really personal because, they are backing you. These are people from your network. We all have accumulated LinkedIn friends, right? That, over the years of our career, and you never really realize the value of them. When it comes, people are watching you quietly and sort of quietly cheering you on.
Yeah.
We are terrible at self-promote, ironically on a podcast, but terrible at, new business, sales, out there networking. I mean, I would rather go and hide in the corner than sort of go and speak at a networking event, although somehow managed to fake it quite well. But it's that new business, traditional sales approach. We just, A, can't do it, and B, it's just not natural for us. So that sort of more authentic trust, give us your problem, we're going to over deliver for you because you've backed us and we know you can trust us. That has been our new business strategies. So it's all been organic.
It's also worth noting as well, I think, that our financial services background has put us in good stead as well, because one of the big things we've heard from clients over the years since we started Loop is you just get it. You understand the difference between an advisor or an institutional investor or Joe Public in the street who wants to save some more money into their pension. Mm-hmm. The amount of times we have to sit down to our agency and explain the difference, because the default is to always go for the man in the street because it's more retail focused. And then we'll have to do it again 6 months later because the last time we sent them a brief, the whole team's changed and we have to explain it to them again. So I think we could have the conversation with them at their level, which I think, again, gave them more confidence.
We've been clients, you see. I mean, both of our careers have been sort of 50-50, agency side, client side. I sort of grew up in London ad agencies and then moved up to Scotland, but I've worked client side equally as long as I've worked agency side. So it's not one or the other. We're a weird hybrid of understanding both. Mm-hmm. So it's helped, understand, speak the same language,
Mm-hmm. You go.
As you have grown, you were then the earliest employee-owned trust as well. Talk about that.
Yes, in Scotland. Scotland's earliest EOT. Yeah, that was this April. Yes. God, it feels like ages ago. It was only just part of 6 months. So, I mean, that can be a whole podcast in itself. That is, we talk a lot about people first and values and culture. And starting with the end in mind, right? As a business founder, that's what we always wanted to. We knew what we wanted the end to look like. We didn't want to build a culture and then sell it to a big network agency, which that culture would go overnight. So an employee-owned trust was really the way of preserving that, to actually have that sort of, I'm not going to use the word legacy because that sounds awful, but it's that sort of just stability of still enjoying what you're going to do for the next 5-10 years while you're doing it, but then leaving it in good hands. But yeah, we were early to do it. Employee-owned trusts tend to be a lot more established as businesses, like 20-year-old family businesses, say, who are handing it to the next generation of, the workforce and things. We were just on our 3rd birthday by doing that, but sort of really sort of put our money where our mouth was, really. And rather than taking what could have been a quick, maybe potentially more lucrative trade exit, what you trade off doing that versus keeping what you're just building. We're only just out the starting blocks. So we just wanted still to be part of it.
And I think it was triggered by, we did have some very, very speculative early interest. And I think it triggered us to look at what the options were. And it became very apparent very quickly. We spoke to a lot of agencies who'd been through the process, where be that private equity investment or a trade sale, and almost to a person, everybody that had been through it went, don't do it. You're selling your soul to the devil. The demands of private equity or a larger business and the targets that you have to hit, and it just you lose the love for it. Your little baby isn't yours anymore, and the pressure just ramps up. Yeah. So those, and we were very keen that, like Vicky said, we're building a culture. That was one of the prerequisites of starting the agencies, is we wanted to do it differently to other people. So actually, the people that helped us build this agency over the years should be the people that carry it on when we decide that we've had our time and we want to leave.
And what's the engagement been like with the team then around the EOT? I mean, do they understand what they're getting and how that works?
It's a journey, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so it's yes, at a high level, we're past that, guess, sort of initial jazz hands part of the launch. You know, we're in the business run, and let's face it, in all sectors, in a very interesting but very difficult trading environment as well. You know, so it's kind of fair to say everything's changed, but nothing's changed as well. You know, I think the core values and the backbone, this totally reinforces that. And it's true, it's authentic, it's through every level of our leadership, and it comes through in the culture. In the boom times, of course, it's a great things of sharing profit share and things like that. It's a great beneficiary benefit, which we're fully committed to. But equally, in the tough trading times, we've all actually got to do more because our clients need more from us. And, you know, so it's a two-way street being a beneficiary. So that's quite interesting because nobody signed up to own a business. And it's a very different mindset, you know, when you're the co-founders and you're prepared to work blood, sweat and tears to obviously, you know, keep this thing viable. Yeah. But you kind of need to do both of it a little bit as a beneficiary. So I think that is the learning sort of curve. And it's interesting for people younger in their career. You know, they're getting exposure to a lot more financial transparency, a lot more business run. You know, a young designer who could be a creative director running their own agency or in 10, 15 years time are really seeing the business workings of it now, not just the creative output piece. So, you know, it's an incredible sort of business model and opportunity, but yeah, every day doesn't necessarily feel different, you know, because at the end of the day, we're all working hard to pay the bills and, you know, and generate income. So, but
I think it's created a camaraderie of we're all in this together to an extent. I think at varying levels. And we're really looking at what the succession plan is for when Vicky and I want to exit. And we have got some great people in there who I think over the next couple of years are evolving and developing to become the next leadership team. So definitely, and like Vicky said, the exposure that the younger members of the team have got that you wouldn't, if you just were a designer in an agency, you just turn up, you do your job, you take your salary and you go home. So they're aware of the targets we have each month and whether we're hitting them, whether we're not hitting them, and all of that stuff, I think, over time, osmosis will allow that to kind of bed in.
They become more rounded business people, won't they?
What gross profit is in, you know, crazy stuff like that.
And do you reckon that is it starting to help kind of shape the culture as well? I wouldn't mind you talking about culture as well, what you're building.
Our culture was this. It's not helping shape the culture. I think it consolidates what already was there. So I think we've said it quite a few times now, but this different part, you know, the being a different agency is just so true. I mean, we've worked in amazing agencies and not so incredible agencies, and you sort of learn these things over your years and you're thinking, beyond needing to pay my own mortgage, I just can't do it to myself again, and I can't do it to people that work around me, is to bring in those bad agency traits to this new entity. So that's actually, that fundamental belief is what shapes the culture. So I think the EOT thing is just a very tangible manifestation of it over the top. You know, that is the moral compass. It's sort of every decision we make, you know, even difficult business decisions, right? There's not always easy, you know, fun team stuff. Sometimes it's hard and you need to say goodbye to people. You know, we've had to have all those sort of conversations, but it's always done with kindness. It's always done with somebody first thinking about over indexing on what you can do to support them. So that's
and transparency as well. Just here's the reason we have to do this, or here's the reason why we're doing this, and understanding it from a business context, not just somebody's made a random decision and I don't really understand why. We're always as honest as we can be with people.
You've earlier on you talked about your kind of rule to not pitch, albeit I think you've pitched at your first client up that side.
Pitch with a small
give us your angle on that, please.
Yeah, so I'll start, but then So, I mean, it's not like it's a rule not to pitch, but it's far better for us to demonstrate it via a pilot, right? Because we're not the ta-da agency that come in with a nice, pretty picture, right? We can do that thing. And pitch is often like a beauty parade. You know, you bring in 3 agencies, client gets to judge the thing. It's a very long, drawn-out process. there's a lot of debate, on how agencies manage to fund that for free versus actually the time efficiency even for a client to do that. It's the old school way of doing it in the industry since Mad Men days. That's what people do, is pitch and sort of do a beauty parade. For us, it's a more fundamental belief that we can actually demonstrate it by just holding up a picture, because we're all about what goes on underneath the bonnet. We're hardcore creative operations. We're tech scaling. We're workflow. We're efficiency. The output is just the small part of it. So actually building a pilot and agreeing KPIs and tech stack and things like that is the only way we can really demonstrate our services.
Yeah, I think it's more fundamental than we're trying to make marketing departments for our clients more efficient. Do more, with the money you've got. There's a real pressure on budgets at the moment. We know the kind of landscape is tough at the moment. So marketing directors are really being put under pressure by their boards and senior leadership to do more with less, or do more with what you've got. You're not going to get the £1 million to do the TV ads like you used to. So how do you leverage that budget better? And I think that's where we can add the value. And fundamentally, I have we're probably one of the few industries out there that do a ton of work for free just to get the opportunity to do a piece of work with a client. You wouldn't go to a gym and go, I'm out of shape. I want a 6-pack in 6 months. And if I get a 6-pack, I might think about paying you, but equally I'm going to ask 6 personal trainers, and then whoever does the best job, I'll pay them, and the other 5 of you won't get paid. It seems, as a concept, it feels very old-fashioned. And it's painter and decorator. I want you to paint my room, and I'll decide at the end of it whether or not you've done a good enough job to pay you. It's kind of it feels odd. So we really want, and it takes a long time, as Vicky said.
Yeah,
a pitch process for a big corporate can be 6 months, and a lot of investment from the agency, not knowing if they're going to get paid for it or not. Whereas we would do 6 months of work and hopefully get to a point, and we've seen this with our clients, get to a point where they're actually turning around and go, well, we can't go back to what we used to have because of the value you've added over the last 6 months. We want to carry this on. So, and I think we've lost clients because of that as well. I think we've they're just not ready to
work like that,
move beyond the norm, let's call it that. So, but I suppose the benefit of that is you end up working with clients who are ready for change and ready to do something differently. So you get the engagement is very high. Yeah.
So when you initially kind of get the start of the conversation with these people, are they initially saying, give me your pitch, and you say, no, actually, we'll do it this way? Or
usually it's, here's our problem. Here's the problems we're trying to solve. We can't get campaigns out the door quick enough. We have issues with the throughput of our process. We have issues with the creative quality. We have issues with our compliance team. So, we had a client that took 11 months to get a campaign out the door. And why was that? So Vicky went in root and branch on, okay, well, here's where there's opportunities to reduce that amount of time.
Yeah.
And then we'll put the processes and the tech and the people in place to help you expedite that.
So it starts with a consultancy that then leads to the solution.
Often, So smoothing it sounds very arrogant. I don't want it to go out as a sound we don't pitch, because that's a very sort of anti-agency statement to make, and it's not, because it's the lifeblood of agency world is pitching. Right. It's just we have a different service and a different approach, and it's luckily been our secret sauce as well, because we're filling a gap in the market which other competitors aren't necessarily approaching it like this. So you spoke about tech and AI and the play that's had. How has that affected what you guys do?
Do you want to take this one?
Well, no, I'm going to let you talk about it, because you are the CTO and I'm the CEO. But it's.
Do you know what? It's interesting. It's very interesting. I think we're obviously at a very interesting time with AI where it's evolving incredibly quickly, to the point that things we're doing for clients last week we couldn't have done a month ago. That's how fast the tech's evolving, and we kind of made a call to make sure we were at the forefront of that rather than waiting. And again, I think the sense is, and I might be wrong in this, but in general, I think there's a lot of people waiting to see what happens. Whereas we're of the belief, well, let's find out everything we can at the moment. So when we do know what's ultimately going to happen, we are ahead of the curve. We've got that knowledge and experience. And actually, we're seeing probably a lot of interest from clients. We did an event a couple of weeks ago. A lot of interest from clients about tangibly how it. I think people don't know what it can do yet, and I think there's a healthy amount of cynicism towards it as well, which is the right thing to be. But also, I think we're in that stage where the dodgy salesmen are out there trying to pitch AI to everybody. So there's a lot of noise, and there's a lot of event. Crikey, every event that you go to is positioned as an AI event, but actually the content isn't that great. There's a lot of people surface level. So we took a decision to go, right, here's 7 legitimate projects that we have done over the last 12 months where we've used AI and how it's added value and how it's saved time or you've been able to do it more efficiently. So our clients could sit there and go, right, I can see how that would benefit me. I can see how you're using AI to help generate copy. And the key word there is help. AI is not replacing the skills and the talent in the team. It's augmenting that process to help them do their job better or quicker or more effectively. So our creative team are fully embracing AI and loving it because it's a different skill set alongside all the other stuff they can already do. And I think that's going to be fundamentally the way the world's going to change in the next. I can't see any way that a tool that makes you able to do things more efficiently, faster, more effectively, that clients aren't going to buy that. Why would you not buy something that can do the job quicker than if you do it manually? So from a business and a commercial perspective, I think in your home life, I think AI has less of an impact because, I'm not going to put an AI generated piece of art on my wall. I'm going to want an original piece of art and things like that. But I think from a commercial business perspective, when it's all about getting scale. Efficiency and scale and throughput, I think it's going to have a massive impact on the world and the way we do stuff.
And so what have you done or what to create the kind of the environment for the team to then make them feel
like we're all in
like
rather than being scared of it.
They want to go in and, that. And also then say, right, okay, how do I get the time to say, right, well, which tools do I actually even latch onto and then start to test? No, that's not so good.
We're investing big in all the tech. Luckily, these guys understand it more than me, but it was a big decision, to have that baked into our budgets. Kicking the tires on every single platform that comes out, rejecting some, keeping others. Thousands of hours the team have done now in actually learning this stuff and being real experts, because we can all put a prompt in and spit out a picture, but that's not using AI for commercial creativity at scale. So it's it's a very different discipline. And it's all the stuff you don't see. It's the ways of working. It's the governance. It's the audit trail. We're working for financial services clients who need reassurance on the legalities, the use, the morals of this as well. So we're really robust on that as well. So I love the fact that we're, it's a whole new part of our proposition.
It's brilliant. It's actually shifting the agency model slightly.
Totally,
the way we're doing stuff. And I think there's 2 other things to touch on as well. From, again, when we set our the values of the business as well. One of them is be bored with normal. So don't come in and just because you used to do it on an Excel spreadsheet as an account manager, that's how you do it. How do you use tech? How do you find tools that help you do that more efficiently? And also in our hiring approach as well. Don't hire somebody who knows how to use an AI tool. Hire somebody who's inquisitive and wants to learn and has an open mind to what's possible. Because I think then you see that mentality of every job that comes in, every project that comes in, okay, how could we do this differently? And I think we're definitely seeing that in the team. We have a really open policy of, like, if you want to go and try a tool, go and try a tool. Don't put any, confidential information into it or client information into it. Come up with scenarios that you can test the tool properly. And if you think it's good, come with a proposal for how you think we could adopt that tool. And we've done that with a few tools. We've done a lot of testing of tools as well. But every time they're using one of these tools, they're learning something and then they're sharing it with the team. And like I said, we've got a really collaborative environment where that works.
And it's given us a real competitive advantage for a service for our clients because, a more traditional big corporate financial services, the governance they need to get through to, can just about put Copilot in on Teams, something like that. But there's sort of plethora of all these other tools, whereas we can de-risk it all for them, know it's very robust, but use all of this great tech at the speed of light, not having to go through panels and things. So it's really given us a sort of speed to market. They know that they can come to us and we're ahead on everything on it. So it's exciting times.
It is.
Like you touched on there, it's sort of changing any agency you speak to, everyone's grappling with what does the next 3 years look like, right? In any creative service. But it's about humans and amplification with AI. So, we're very clear on the human talent in the in-house agency, but we amplify them with AI versus a whole new string to our bow now, which is agents. So Loop Agents, which is all of our tech stack. We've got some proprietary platforms where we're bundling up a lot of these AI pieces that we can sell to other sort of smaller clients who don't necessarily want a dedicated creative team in their office, like a smaller charity or something like that, but they could have access to all of this creative toolkit that we can build them as their agents. So it's like getting the opportunity from it rather than running away from it, really.
Can I ask, going back to your value, be bored with normal,
Yes.
what might some others be? I like that one. That's good.
So look after each other. Again,
true, yeah.
back to the culture of trying to build a different type of agency where we're looking at it's not a bun fight for who can climb over the top of everybody else to get to the top. It's definitely a look after each other, and that's from a well-being perspective, but from a learning perspective, and from just generally there's a camaraderie, I think, in the team that works really well. And our third one, and we didn't want to do 6 or 8, or I got told I had a business coach and he said, so many people have these painted on the walls and beautiful murals, and then if you challenge them what they are, nobody can recite them. Or we live or die by these, but actually I can't remember any of them. So we always wanted to keep it broad, but only have a few. And the third one is sign the engine block.
Okay.
Which is a little bit cryptic, but I'm a bit of a car nut. And I always remember seeing the badge that Rolls-Royce put on the top of the engine block of the car with the engineer that puts the car together and signs it off from a quality and a perspective. And we've kind of tried to instill this in the team that every single piece of work that goes out the door, if you've touched it, you are responsible for how good or bad that is going out the door. So the standards, we want to keep the standards as high as possible.
And that's all glued together with something that when we became the AOT had this sort of team intent, which is the best thing that sits above it all is it won't fail because of me. So we've all got, that is a phrase from NASA. We didn't come up with that, but we own it in our everyday culture and got the T-shirts and everything. But it's that real challenge in appraisals and sort of it's baked into our behaviours of don't walk past the problem, fix it it might fail, because of you. I look myself in the mirror, when I don't want to make that scary client call or do that extra bit of finance, on Sunday evening, which I'd rather be watching sort of telly, it won't fail because of me, and you need to look at yourself and think, well, actually, if I don't do that extra bit of effort, it might fail. So I need to do it. It's a real sort of compass to sort of push towards the normal standards and to do extra.
Don't walk past the problem. There isn't anything, you don't have this is my list of tasks that I have in my job description and that's all I do and it's very, very blinkered. You are responsible for the whole output of the agency.
Yeah.
So if you see something that somebody else has done that you think isn't quite right, step in and fix it. And so it's the classic, like you said, it's a NASA phrase. It was the guy who's mopping the floors in NASA, and somebody asks him, well, tell me what your job is, and he says, well, I'm helping put a man on the moon, and he's doing his small part to help contribute to the bigger thing. And I think that's the mentality we've got in the team.
Amazing. Guys, we ask all our guests, what is your guiding principle in business?
Oh. I'll go, have you got one? I mean, I think it's come through in this, hopefully, and it's always when you speak about yourself, but just kind of be decent to people, right, on the way up, and they're there for you, and just be decent, I mean, I drive a hard bargain, I'm tough and sort of relentless on what my standards are, but I hope I always do it with human kindness and sort of decency. So, if you've got that, then we're all humans, right? And you want to enjoy what you're doing. So you can do it the other way and be mean and nasty, or you can actually just be kind and considerate, but still drive a hard bargain and get things done. So,
yeah, I'd echo that. The other one I've got is never settle. Just always be pushing for what's next, what's going to change. How do you make stuff better? How do you improve stuff? How do you learn when things go wrong? Just be really open-minded and just keep pushing forward. Yeah, just never get bored with normal.
Yeah, more than that.
Ed, Vicky, thank you so much for coming on,
Thank you.
sharing your story, and we wish you all the luck in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Lovely
Thank
to
you.
chat.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Edinburgh Business Stories. If you found it useful or inspiring, please do subscribe and follow along for more conversations just like this. And why not share it with your friends too, so that more people can hear these inspiring stories. We'd also love it if you could rate and review this podcast wherever you're listening. This helps more people to find us and ensures that we can keep bringing you these stories for years to come. And if there's someone you think that we should speak to, let us know. We're always looking for great stories to share. You can email us at edinburgh@businessstories.co.uk. And as always, a big thank you to Rathbones for partnering with us on this episode. Rathbones. Invest well, live well.